Good morning, David, Abhi. We have the full crew this week, and everybody is happy. Actually, it snowed here in Seattle. Do you know that? We had like 2 inches of snow 2 days in a row, and everybody is jumping around going, "Oh my God, we don't know what to do because we've got 2 inches of snow."
Wow.
Two
Wow.
whole
That's a
inches,
lot.
2 whole inches.
I'm here in Boston, so I'm like, yeah, that's a lot.
You got 2 inches in an hour, but
Yeah.
terrific. I'm glad we all got a chance to be able to connect back again. And the interesting thing I wanted to talk about, I think we all were going back and forth on Slack about this, and Abhi, you and I talked about this on email, and then you called me. There's a growing set of people that are saying ABM, account-based marketing. For those of you that don't know, it is an approach. Some people call it a strategy, some people call it an approach, some people call it a market motion or sales motion to go after a specific set of accounts. Now, this has existed for the last 10 or 12 years, maybe even more. But there are a specific set of companies that have come out building ABM solutions like Six Sense, Bombora, Demandbase. There are quite a few of them. But in the last couple of, I would say months, maybe even the last month or 2 months, a lot of people complaining that it's not working. And so today's topic is the ABM dying? Is ABM dead? Is it going down that path? Or is it just a lot of people complaining about it? David, let's start with you first. ABM, where do you stand? What's the context for it?
Um, I think it's still alive and well, but I think a lot of people got burned by the overpromise of some of the platforms that they purchased. Um, like ABM as a strategy and as a platform would sort of solve all of their problems. Um, and so obviously that didn't turn out. There is no silver bullet, so to speak, and adopting any strategy and or platform and or both requires like a lot of change management, a lot of data wrangling, just boatloads of work, and that can be difficult. So I think a lot of the initial failure was poor adoption and overpromising by solution providers. You're on mute, bro.
Abhi, what do you think? I know that you've been talking about it to me as well. Is this good for only a few people? Is this smaller companies only that can do this? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I cannot agree more with what just David said. I think, it's it's not working out. Primarily, it's a misaligned expectation. Um, and this whole fundamental approach that technology can solve a strategy or a motion itself is wrong. Like I feel there's nothing wrong about the AVM strategy. I would say that's awesome because when I was like starting off in B2B marketing, I was like, wait, what? Like this whole fishing with the net kind of an approach just doesn't work, just doesn't scale. Like I had been all my life, I've been kind of thinking about how you could do precision work, how you can be more realistic. There's only limited set of companies, there's only limited set of people. Like, why would you show an ad and email to my mom if you're a Cisco router? Like, why? You know, sort of thing. So I think the strategy is table stake. So if you're in B2B, like you have to do ABM approach. Now, whatever new emerging word now, it's coming like ICP marketing. It's kind of a new thing. You can call it outbound motion, but who do you outbound? Like, would you identify your ICP and then do outbound, which is kind of similar to ABM strategy, right? So there's no problem in the strategy approach. I think to implement the ABM strategy, there is like a set of tools you need and an approach and an operations and a cadence that is flawed. But at the other hand, some of the over promises by the tool led a lot of like marketing people to perceive that that's like the silver bullet. And then the third thing is at the executive level, we never knew like how to measure it. Like businesses don't know how to measure it. Like because then they think, oh, this is ABM is a strategy which is corporate wide, but then they kind of track like how much marketing has generated leads from using whatever strategy. So this it's a mess out there. And last not the least, I mean, some of these platform and tech and all that is super expensive, you know. So why would you spend like 250 grand on just licensing and buying an expensive piece of tech and then try to make it work for next 2 quarters where the CMO life cycle is about 14, 16 months? Like that doesn't resonate, right? So because of
Yeah.
all this, I feel it's not working out. So you may perceive it's dying.
So I think the good things about ABM are the absolute focus, right? You get a list of companies that you want to bring on as customers. Now, a certain percentage of them you are able to be successful with, and a certain percentage not. So that's one good thing about it. The second good thing about ABM is it aligns both sales and marketing on what we want to drive action within a specific set of companies, right? That's another good thing about it. The third thing is the spray and pray approach that previously used to work is this is more of a spearfishing approach, right? You're saying, I want to go after these companies. If everybody else comes, that's fine. I'm not going to do that. The challenging part, everybody thinks ABM equals buying demand sense or buying six sense or demand base or whatever it is. So yeah, like you said, $250,000, 6 months later, you're still stuck and you're trying to figure out how to make it work. Let's figure out a different approach. Now, on the flip side, we hear a lot of people talking about ICP marketing, and then there are very hands-on, simple tools like Clay as well. Awesome solution, but still, what it does is just primarily enrichment. You give it a list of companies and say, give me the counts and give me the names of the people, and it enriches data that you want. David, you've used Clay, you've used other solutions like this. ABM Clay is not an ABM tool per se. It's a much better version of ZoomInfo plus maybe a spreadsheet-like tool like Airtable. But is that ABM? Are people going to replace and say we're going to replace our ABM solution with Clay?
Um, well, I guess you could. It is like a spreadsheet on crack. So you plug in all your tools into the spreadsheet and then you can like execute on stuff. Though, um, like all of us know, if you have a bunch of sheets or a bunch of documents, it gets messy very, very quickly. So I think it sort of breaks when you need to scale. But yeah, in general, I think you can execute on an ABM initiative using Clay at the small scale. But once you try and go bigger, it'll create a bigger problem.
This is like saying that I can use Google Sheet and execute on ABM.
Yeah, replace my CRM, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Claire.
yeah.
Yeah.
Abhi, so let's work on that a little bit. Let's probe that a little bit more. If you had to build the ideal ABM strategy, you will need to think about your strategy and your process. You'll need to think and figure out whether you have the right people to help you execute that plan. And you need to find, obviously, a set of technology solutions that can help you, whether it is what some people call the unbundling of ABM or some people call the different tools for different purposes, best of breed type of thing. How would you do it? Let's say that you were the CMO of a big tech, no, not a big tech. Big tech is not our ideal customer. Let's take a smaller customer, a Series A, Series B company doing about 5, 10, 50, $20 million in revenue. And you had to put together an ABM strategy focused on about the top 200, 300, or maybe even 500 accounts. What would an ABM strategy comprise of? And you are the CMO starting today.
Yeah. No, I think go to market is relatively easier, simpler if you are Series A and like Series A, B, and you haven't gone like super enterprise level where you have too many segments or too many tiers, too many product to deal with, and a lot of complexity in your product. With a typical Series A and B and C kind of category, you already know what is working, right? So you know
Yeah.
exactly which industry, which segment, which type of customer, what problem you're solving. So there's a lot of richness in terms of live data, and you've seen it evolving, right? Now, the first step is to identify who is your target audience. That's that holy grail, right? And when I used to work with like working with this massive enterprise, like we help Palo Alto Networks execute on ABM, right? And it was like you think about like because of their acquisition and all that, they had like multi-product,
Yeah.
multi-situation, all of that. It's really hard to know like what's your target audience, like everyone, needs security help. But for a Series A, B, C company, if you just focus on this is my ideal customer, and then maybe at this stage, I would say you cannot go over with your eyeball checks or your CRO or your CMO or whoever your head of sale should like do a gut check and look at a spreadsheet and say, oh, somebody told me to pick only 200 accounts for ABM. These are the 200 most one. Well, that's a disaster recipe, right? So, one, there's a fitment issue when you're doing the target audience assessment. But then, once you do the fitment, are these people in the market? Like, what is driving? What is the trigger? Why do I even target? So I feel right now there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of noise out there in the market. There's a lot of complexity. You can't make out. I can't put like Amazon today as a technology company, as a retail company, like those SIC code doesn't work. Because there's so much complexity we're living, right? The world is full of abstractions. So saying Zoom info would give me the list of my target audience is like, you know, too ambitious target. So the best way I feel at this point of time is to leverage AI to basically go much more deeper into look at various permutation combination of patterns and then sort of have a co-assisted report which you can then sort of go over. So you basically could do AI lookalike on your ideal customer and identify who are the relevant, white space account or which are the target account you should target. So one is that. The next step after you have that fitment or the right set of account, you actually should be able to get unified signal about those accounts. So you know how to rank. But what if, in the process of ICP, you have, I don't know, 10,000 accounts to focus. While as an ABM strategy, you just want to focus on the first like 2,000, 3,000. Because ABM is expensive, right? Sort of a thing. So, which are the ones you focus today, like this week, next month? And there should be a reasoning. So, I would say, like, my target persona has just joined, like, in the last 60 days, and there's a theory that if I'm selling into CMO and there's a CMO hiring has happened in the last 60 days, I want to prioritize that account and it's meeting my ICP guideline. So it's meeting my fitment. So I wanted to kind of do this waterfall approach that one, I'm doing the AI lookalike, I'm finding the right fitment, then I'm tracking a whole bunch of signals within that pipe to basically know which one I pick up the phone and target this quarter, this week, sort of a thing. So people underestimate the complexity of targeting the audience, like totally. Like they
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I'll just pick up the phone, I'll get a list from this data vendor, and boom, I'm done. Well, that's where I think the biggest challenge arises today. And I'm just telling you about the account, just account, not the buyer, right? So once I figure out who my target accounts are, then I got to figure out who in that account, who's my buyer persona, who's my user persona. Then I start sending them email cadence, but also advertising. Well, that's how ABM tools got popular. Like it was advertising, fishing by the spear. So I want to do balance. I want to do email cadence. I want to do LinkedIn outreach. I want to do DSP led, ABM advertising, all of that. And basically generate enough branding and interest. And people want to spend like 1 or 2, 3 months, as you know, before they kind of start engaging with your content. And that's that whole pipeline, what I just explained you is what in today's time an ideal ABM approaches, which I don't think any of these 250K platform does that. It's not happening at all.
And it's
It's
also not clay alone, right? It's not like you can
oh
do
yeah.
this whole thing only with clay, right? That's the challenge I see when I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
a lot of people on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, I replaced my entire ABM strategy with working with clay." I'm like, okay, really? If you think that that's all that ABM is, either you're not thinking about ABM enough, or
yeah,
you're thinking that clay does a lot more than it does, right? Now, you mentioned three or four different parts to ABM. One is the ICP.
yeah,
The second part is finding and making sure that, and what you mentioned, the ICP keeps changing a little bit based on new accounts that you get, right? So it's dynamic, it's morphing. It's not a set it once and forget it type of a thing. Then the second part of it is actually creating that audience from the ICP, which is the persona-based model. You have a persona, but what I've seen, even in our case, if you look at it, we have a persona, we have a role, but the titles keep changing. So it's not like there's a perfect fit there as well, right? We say we want to talk to a director of marketing who owns performance marketing. Well, really, if you look at the titles, it's all over the map. Some people
yeah.
have the title of some people have the title of growth. Some people have the title of lead gen, and they all do the same thing, right? So it's not perfect. You have to do that. That's the second part. Then you have to create an actual list. Then you have to actually have created a landing page and the content and the campaign associated with it, or ads, whatever you have to do. Then you have to make sure you collect the signals associated with when they're coming, what they're doing. Now, if you break these parts, is there a sense that if someone had to buy each of these individual parts one by one and then build it back, do you think that it might cost the same thing as the Sixth Sense? Is that what the bigger customers are doing?
I I think you hit the nail on the head. It's actually not the technology. There is no silver bullet. There's no button you have to press, even if there's something available. No. All of these parts are heavy data oriented, if you see that. So, one, you need to have the know how and discipline and process to identify that SAM criteria. And you should have the flexibility to play around. And it's really hard in the way how third party data vendors sell their data because they're largely not meant for this activity. They're largely meant for SDRs. So they're like, instead of using CRM, just log in to Zoom Info or Apollo or whatnot, and then start doing outbound. PDR outreach, SDR outreach, a whole bunch of those things. But this requires you to look at your internal data, look at your internal CRM. You want to identify the account. You want to make a little bit of modeling out there, and you don't even have resources. You're just person of one. You have barely played with spreadsheets, like, and then that leads to people look for, like, what is the tool?
Yeah.
How can I, like, put all these abstraction and pieces of work into, like, and just kind of use a tool approach. But frankly, I haven't seen like one tool which can ensure both the effectiveness, unless the approach is not like followed very religiously. So it comes down to, like, you working on data and discipline, and either you can do DIY or you can try some of these tools which are actually following the steps for customized for you, not one size fit all. Because that's the other problem. Everyone has the same same set of account everyone's going after. And they're like, oh, I found my ICP. Let's just spray and pray more ads to the same set of long tail of accounts, where everyone is going after. And that's why it becomes so saturated. So that's how I think.
David, let's drill on the other portion of it. From a sales perspective, so you have an ABM campaign, which is a go-to-market team is coming out with an ABM campaign as an example. The marketing team has to do a bunch of work. The sales team has to do a bunch of work. And obviously the customer success team has to align with both of those as well. You've been in both marketing ops, sales ops, you played a different set of roles as well. How difficult or easy is it to adopt an ABM end-to-end platform like a Sixth Sense or Demandbase or any of the others versus starting with simple solutions that solve a specific problem and then grow from there?
So yeah, what I've seen is when people take on these monolithic silver bullet platforms, is number one, they struggle to implement, and then they'll struggle to integrate, and then they'll struggle to operate. Um, let's say they get through all three phases. then I think what they struggle with the most is, well, what the hell is happening? I mean, especially with intent vendors. Uh, you'll sling the intent over into Salesforce, let's say, and then it scores the account high. It pops up to sales. Sales gives them a phone call, and then after the phone call, sales calls up marketing and is like, "What the hell happened? What?" um, and so that's where I've seen a lot of the breakages. And I think speaking, from what Abhi said, part of this is like the fact that people are running these signals and all of this data, all this event stuff, like through what I would call like static scoring systems. It's very like marketers inherited this from like MQLs and SQLs, right? Like, okay, someone landed on your site and they downloaded a white paper. Okay, now they're an MQL, right? We all know when we're looking for a piece of information, like when I was at Engagio, the clear and concise guide to account-based marketing. I mean, that was like a huge asset for us. And so then when someone downloaded it, all of a sudden they're like MQL. But literally, I would get on the phone with these people and they were like, "Oh, we love your content." So like really what the scoring system was doing was measuring the effectiveness of the actual like book and not sort of their interest in the platform. And so that's where I think AI can really create a big difference. Because like if you feed a model something as simple as like XGBoost, these black box ML models. You just like pump a bunch of data into them and they'll do all this advanced statistical work on it and they'll figure out like what events, what things are contributing to the wins and what aren't. So it's
Yeah.
adaptable.
Now, when let's talk about this other topic of AI, right? We all know that every marketer I know and I talk to using AI in some way, shape, or form. Some of them are using it for creating content. Some of them are using it for tweaking their strategy, putting together notes, analyzing data. They're all using it in bits and bytes. And some of them are using it for just research and understanding, which is all fine and good. But if you try to use the AI model on top of the data, the most important thing you need to do is make sure your data is clean and data is AI ready, right? That's the biggest challenge we see with a lot of customers. I know that when we talked to one of the customers last week, they said, yeah, take the bad data, put AI on top of it, you're going to get bad answers. I thought that was one of the most funniest things I ever heard. How can we help with the enrichment and enhancement of the data to make sure that the data is right, clean, and ready for AI ready data? How do we help with that?
Yeah, I kind of I find it really funny when people say AI ready data because the data was not even human ready ever. So it's like the AI readiness, you know. And first it needs to be human ready so that then human can translate that, yes, this is the data I want to give it to my AI. So there's no more garbage in, garbage out, which I have kind of grew up with on, like the human saying so. But going back to your question, I think we're we are entering in an era where marketing is like getting more and more data and algorithm driven. And first, we were not acknowledging it. It was always like this for last couple of years. You see, you look at Meta, LinkedIn algorithm or Google algorithm, decide a lot of things, right? Look what's happening every now and then. I think marketing inherently is very right brain, and their majority focus has always been creative side. If we do the best on creative, this somebody would like this SQL jockey would like figure it out what to do with my data set. We'll set the thing. We are now getting into an era where we don't need a SQL jockey. We need a right brain and a left brain, kind of T-shaped marketeer who understand the value of created as much as see the value in the data and algorithm play. And some of the really good ones, which are like really successful, are these one. are these kind of marketing. So thinking, and that's where you don't run into issues like, okay, I gotta buy this tool and all my problems will be solved. I think this is a whole mindset shift which is now required to be a little bit more data driven than instead of being just call themselves a data driven. See my point?
Yeah, yeah.
The conversation should shift from tools to like data-driven marketing, which has been around, but not like, but more like an ad age, right? More in the kind of operationalizing. You can have the best of best strategy today in place, but if you don't know how to operationalize between tools, I mean, it's hard, right? And when we say it's operationalizing tool, it's actually operationalizing with your data. So.
David, let's have a last thought on this from you. Getting data to be AI ready.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that it needs to be human ready first. So just think about like the most recent use cases we've run across with B2C. Um, if you can't unify the data around individual customers, then you can only ever really do like last click attribution. So all all of the stuff that you did to drive them to your site and buy something, you're only going to get the last piece of it. So you're only going to get, it's kind of like our relationship. Like, what, I just met you today, Mukund? You know what I'm saying? No, obviously we've had a longer relationship, right? That's why we're here today on this podcast. So like just something as simple as being able to unify like a person's journey. Now your data ducks are in a row, and now someone can understand it. If they can understand it, then they can ask appropriate questions. I mean, it's like ask ChatGPT something that to solve something that's impossible. It'll never tell you it's impossible. It'll probably try and help you solve it. You'll go down a lot of rabbit holes. So yeah,
Yeah,
data.
yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to make a one really important point, Mukund, which we completely missed out in our ABM conversation, is this whole rise of people-based marketing,
Yeah.
both as a campaign and a narrative. And I totally believe in that, primarily because, and that's why we kind of serve both like B2B, B2C customer, because the lines are blurring. And for ABM effectiveness, it's actually pretty keen, key approach. Because what's happening is, even if I'm a B2B brand and I have users and I have communities in Discord and GitHub and all these places, the lines are blurring between where I'm spending my time. Am I spending most of my time on LinkedIn, most of my time in other communities play? It's really hard to identify those people through this whole account-based approach. I mean, you should have an account approach, but then you need to know your audience. If you're a security company, which we are working with few, they all gonna focus on security folks, no matter which company they work in. If they're today working with one company, 2 years later they may be in the other. They'll always be security folks.
Yeah.
The database companies. Look at who's actually the real big spender on ABM. These are all these tech companies, and they anyway focus on potential user, potential buyer who kind of stay in that kind of rail. And that's why this whole narrative around people-based marketing is catching up, because then you can target them on LinkedIn, you can target them on Meta and Insta, and they're same set of folks. We see Claude ads or billboards now on SFO Airport and Boston Airport all the time, right? So that's like one big aspect emerging in the ABM, which is also kind of pushing the whole traditional mindset of ABM.
All right. Any final thoughts? David, do you want to get what is it that seems to be on the ABM LinkedIn following list that you're seeing on your profile and timeline? I see a lot, man. I see every day. I see ABM is dying, ABM is dead, ABM is replaced by this and that. What are you seeing on your timeline, David, from LinkedIn on ABM?
Um, I think it's like I was saying earlier, it was the overpromise of the original vendors, and maybe those vendors have sort of developed a poor reputation, so to speak, and maybe their momentum has died. But that being said, I don't think ABM's going anywhere.
Abhi?
Yeah, no, ABM is going to stay. I think what is changing is the means of operationalizing ABM strategy is going to be completely, it's a different playbook now. The traditional approach is not working, it will not work. Whether we call this people-led ABM or we call it like audience-led
Right.
marketing, you
I was
know,
going to say audience. Yeah.
yeah, so it's one of those things which we'll see it already happening. Like Mukund and I both are like big evangelists. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna believe in my audience portability. Even though like audience is a broader word, like we mean like target audience. We're like precision people, like target audience. I'm gonna move around wherever my target audience is, wherever they're spending time. If they're spending time on ChatGPT, there I am. If they're spending time on LinkedIn, there I am. Like if I'm a brand and I want to put my message out there, I'll just go after those set of target people. And that has kind of started to gain a lot of momentum, which I would say would give a renewal or re-energize this ABM strategy in a new way, completely with a new tech. So,
Awesome. Thank you both, guys. Have a great weekend. We will see you guys on Monday. Next week, we're going to be probably from Florida or something. We'll see. If you guys are in Florida, we'll try and do a message from there. If not, I'll have another person who I'm planning to have as a guest. So we're going to start having guests in this podcast. So that'll be fun.
yeah,
Woo!
excited.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Like,